Tonight, we are going to be reviewing verbal phrases. You guys learned about those the past couple of days in language arts. And verbal phrases are forms of verbs that do not act like verbs. They look like a verb, but in the sentence, they function as something else. We started talking about gerunds. That is the type of verbal phrase that we've talked about so far. You're going to learn about infinitive phrases and participle phrases, but we haven't gone over those yet this year. But tonight, we're just going to do a quick review of what a gerund phrase is. Now, as I said, a verbal is a word that looks like a verb, but it acts like a noun, an adjective, or an adverb. Now, tonight's verbal, as I said, is going to be the gerund that we will review that you learned in class. And gerunds only act like nouns, only nouns. They always end in ing, so gerunds end in ing always, and act like nouns. Okay, so gerunds end in ing and they act like nouns and only nouns. Now, they're going to look like verbs, but they will act like nouns. For example, this is a gerund phrase, and it has the word, I don't know if you can see that. I think maybe as I look in the camera, that looks too small. So let me just write it out larger for you. Walking the dog. Okay, this is a verbal phrase. It contains a word that looks like a verb because in many cases, in most cases actually, walking does behave like a verb. But in the case of this verbal phrase, this whole group of words together is going to act like one noun. Now let me show you a sentence in which walking the dog acts like a noun and does a noun job. Okay, I'm going to use the phrase walking the dog as the subject of my sentence. Walking the dog is my job. Okay, now we are going to follow all the steps of attacking sentences. So, the first thing we do when we attack a sentence is look for any prepositional phrases. Are there any prepositional phrases in this sentence? No, there are not. The next thing that we need to do is find the main verb. Now, don't make the mistake and think, oh, walking, that's the main verb. It is not. And verbs in the sentence very rarely ever begin the sentence. They sometimes do in the case of a command, but in most cases, there is a subject that comes before the verb. So this is not the verb. As we look at the sentence, walking the dog is my job, I notice the word is. Is can be a verb, it always is a verb, and it can be a linking verb. And in this case, it is a linking verb because there is no other verb after it that it is helping, so we know it's a linking verb. So then we ask ourselves, who is or what is? Don't say the dog is, because would it make sense to say the dog is my job? No, that doesn't make sense. The dog is not your job. That makes no sense at all. So then we have to think, what is? walking the dog is my job. So this word walking is part of a verbal phrase. And in this case, it is a gerund phrase that is acting as a noun. And the job that that noun is doing is being the subject of the sentence. Walking the dog is the subject. Walking is a gerund. Walking the dog is a gerund phrase. Okay, now let's try using the gerund phrase walking the dog as a different noun job in a sentence. So let's say Jane enjoys walking the dog. Okay, same gerund phrase, same verbal, walking. Let's see what noun job this gerund phrase does in the sentence. Okay, are there any prepositional phrases in this sentence? No, there are not. What is the main verb in our sentence? You may be tempted to say walking. Jane enjoys walking the dog. But before you jump at that and think it's walking, look and see if there's another action word or linking word in the sentence. Enjoys. Enjoys is an action. That is something I can do. I believe enjoys is the main verb in this sentence, and that is an action. So I believe that enjoys is the main verb in this sentence. Now let's find our subject. Who or what enjoys? Jane. So Jane is our subject. Now we have to see if there is a direct object or an indirect object by asking Jane, take the subject, plus the verb enjoys. Jane enjoys what? Jane enjoys walking? That would make sense to say she enjoys walking, but it's more than just walking. It's walking the dog, not just walking. And don't make the mistake of saying Jane enjoys the dog. She may enjoy the dog, but this sentence is specifically saying that Jane enjoys walking the dog. So this verbal walking, together with the words the dog, together acts as a noun, and the noun job that it is acting like is the direct object. Jane enjoys what? Walking the dog. So there is another noun job that walking the dog can do. Now let's try making walking the dog do the job of the indirect object. This is always a little bit tricky, but we can do it. Let's say Mrs. Bodette, we'll make her part of our review tonight. Mrs. Bodette gives walking the dog a try. So let's say Mrs. Bodette has a big dog. She actually does. And his name is Mauer. And he's getting pretty big. He's way bigger than my dog. Big black lab. And let's say that she decides she's going to give walking the dog a try. He's kind of strong. He pulls her. But she's going to give it a try. So that sentence makes sense if you think about what I'm intending for it to mean. Mrs. Bodette gives walking the dog. Oops, I left out a word. I always do this when I make my videos. I'm doing too many things at once. She gives walking the dog a try. Okay, now it makes sense. Okay, so let's find the main verb in the sentence. Don't make the mistake of thinking walking is the main verb. Let's just say we thought it was. We would have to ask ourselves, who or what is walking? Mrs. Bodette is walking, Well, she could be walking, but it doesn't really make sense in the rest of the sentence because there's so much more going on here. What other action word or linking word could be our main verb? Gives. I can give. I think gives is the action verb. So now we ask ourselves, who or what gives? Mrs. Bodette gives. So Mrs. Bodette is the subject. Okay, now we have to see if we have a direct object. We take the subject plus the verb and ask what? Mrs. Bodette gives what? She gives a try. I know that's a bit of a stretch. You really have to think about that one. But she gives a try. So direct object, the direct object is try. She gives what? She gives a try. To whom or for whom does she give a try? Walking the dog. She gives walking the dog a try. So this is our indirect object. And these are thinkers. You really have to think about it. But this is what she is giving a try. She's giving a try. And what is she giving a try? Walking the dog. So that is a case where walking the dog is a gerund, and it is doing the job of the indirect object. Okay, now let me erase some of this. I'll go back up here and erase this one. Let's see if we can make it the object of the preposition. I'm going to have to think for a second on that one. Okay, I had to pause to think for a minute, but I got it. Let's see if we can make walking the dog the object of the preposition. I believe we can. Sarah told Jack about walking the dog. Okay, so let's attack this sentence. First thing we always have to do is find our prepositional phrases. Is there a preposition? Yes, about is a preposition. Therefore, about walking the dog is our prepositional phrase. Okay, let's move my magnet. Okay, now we know that's our prepositional phrase. Now let's find our main verb. Sarah told Jack. Told is an action, so that is our action verb. Now let's find our subject. Who or what told? Sarah told. Sarah is our subject. Now we have to see if we have a direct object. Sarah told what? Or Sarah told who? Sarah told Jack. So Jack is our direct object. And now we have to look at our prepositional phrase. A prepositional phrase always begins with a preposition, and that's what about is, and it always ends with a noun. Don't think that dog is the noun and that dog is the object of the preposition. It isn't by itself. She didn't just tell about the dog. She told about walking the dog. This is a verbal phrase. It is a gerund phrase. Gerunds always end in ing, and they always do the job of a noun. This noun job is the object of the preposition. So this is a situation where a verbal, walking the dog, is doing an object of the preposition job. So we have shown an example for gerunds being subjects, direct objects, indirect objects, objects of the preposition, and we have one more that I almost forgot about. The other noun job is predicate nominative. This one is kind of a little bit easier. A predicate nominative is a noun that follows a linking verb. So let's start our sentence with, my favorite job is walking the dog. In a situation where a gerund phrase is a predicate nominative, the verb is almost always a form of be. Is, are, am, was, were, be, been. Almost always. It's very rarely one of those. In fact, I can't think of a situation where it's one of those unusual ones, such as appear, seems, sounds, looks, feels. I can't think of any more, but there are several more. But it's rarely, if ever, one of those. It usually follows a form of be, such as is. Now, kids tend to, you guys tend to look at this and think, oh, is walking is the verb. It's the action verb. Well, if we pretend that that is correct, that is walking is our action verb, okay? Let's think about it. Let's just say we think about it. And then we ask the question, who or what is walking? Job? Job is the noun over here. Job is walking? No, a job cannot walk. Doesn't make any sense. So that's when we know that, no, this is not an action verb with a helping verb. This is a linking verb. Is a linking verb all by itself. It's a linking verb. This is part of a verb phrase, a verbal. So let's find our subject. My favorite job is walking the dog. Is. Who or what is? Job is. That makes sense? Job is our subject. Job is what? What is my favorite job? It's not walking. It's not dog. It's the whole thing. This is a gerund phrase. This is the gerund ending in ing. And this is the gerund phrase, walking the dog. When a noun follows a linking verb, it is the predicate nominative. So this is our final noun job that a gerund phrase can do. It can do all of the noun jobs that any noun can do. Any common noun, any proper noun. This instead is a noun phrase. It's a verbal phrase known as a gerund that does noun jobs. So hopefully this video will help you to understand gerunds a little bit better, and we'll do some more practice, and hopefully you will understand them a little bit better. Until next time, see ya.